Hi everybody, I'm with Sir William Brent Kelly. We're in front of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. We're exercising our First Amendment right now, and we're going to be discussing our Fifth Amendment rights, the right to due process. So I'll let you go with it, and I'll just chime in if I think of something witty or something.
Most excellent. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln settled an issue, and the issue he settled is that there's no statehood outside of union. This is best understood when you look at sufficient and necessary conditions in logic. When you have sufficient and necessary conditions, it means that elements are sufficient to call each other into being, and they necessarily do so. As such, you either have coexistent elements or no elements at all. Abraham Lincoln understood this. He understood it was a relationship. There are three things Southerners, and Abraham Lincoln was a Southerner, he was born in Kentucky like Mary Todd. There's three things Southerners know that Northerners just might not get even today. And that's that identity doesn't necessarily arise from genus and differential. We argue that there are three important identities that don't arise from genus and differential. They arise out of relationship. So the identity and the relationship arise together. No identity, no relationship. No relationship, no identity. And these three things are God, kin, and country. With God, me being Catholic, of course, the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The Father, His Word, and His breath. I don't look at that like there's a differential or there's separation. I see it as an interrelationship. Same with family. Now here's where I lose the debate with the Northerners, because they say the word genus means family and differential is mother, father, brother, sister. But let's face it, where the rubber meets the road is no relationship, no family. This is what Abraham Lincoln knew. And so Old South Abel was truly struck down by Old South Cain. As a Southerner, he knew that it was the interrelationship that brought about the identity, just like with God and with family. And thus, there is no statehood outside of union, and there's no union without statehood. It's an interrelationship. No interrelationship, no identity. No identity, no interrelationship. They coexist. They're coexistent elements. This was settled during the Civil War, and Southern generals used to say, I give my soldiers logistical support and tactical training geared towards a strategy. I set them to the field, and then I throw the issue up to God. Well, God decided the issue. So, this has been somewhat codified in each state constitution. If you look up in your state constitution, you will find words to the effect that the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Now, that means that the states are submitting to the proper and lawful and ultimate authority of the United States Constitution. In addition, I ask all Americans to shake your heads. Shake it. Shake your head and go revisit the Constitution. Always a good thing. As you become wiser, mysteriously, the Founding Fathers' wisdom is revealed. In the 10th Amendment, which they used to suggest that states have rights, and they've been using that iron rod to beat everybody down for 250 years to deny and disparage their rights, they use it as a vehicle to acquire sovereign immunity, a doctrine that is British and appropriate only for an absolute monarch. Well, if you look at the 10th Amendment, it doesn't say states' rights. It says states and people's powers. The 9th Amendment, which they don't quote, says people's rights. So you have two amendments, one with rights, one with powers. Both of them have people, one of them has states. If the Founding Fathers intended states to have rights, they would have put people and states' rights in the 9th Amendment the same way they put people and states' powers in the 10th. They didn't do that, and they didn't run out of ink. If you were to look at history, you would find out what sovereign immunity is all about. When the Whigamores wanted a reform to create a judiciary under the absolute monarch, they needed an argument. So they went to the king and they said, yo, out of your treasury, you support these earls. You give them an army. Then they get in a dispute. You have to settle the dispute. Somebody's upset. They get together over time, usurp you, and become king. Wouldn't it be great to have a judiciary so we could decide the issue for you? You could stay above the fray and all would be well? The king said, that sounds like a great idea, but it also sounds like you want my power and I'm not giving it to you. And they said, no, wait, king. We'll have this idea called sovereign immunity that we're going to give you. And sovereign immunity means you don't need an argument, you don't need to lawyer up, you don't have to give a logical reason even. All you have to do is invoke your sovereign immunity and the case won't lay. However, ad initio, you're going to agree that if the case lays, you will not disturb it, because they did not want this great idea of a judiciary coincide to the dustbins of history as a failure because of arbitrary disruption of decisions by the king. They knew that the truth died easy and lies continue forever. The king saw that he had absolute power, that he could invoke sovereign immunity at any time. He agreed. That is the doctrine of sovereign immunity. It is appropriate only for an absolute monarch in an absolute monarchical system like the British had. It has nothing to do with republic. We are not the cousins of the British. We are not their friends. They are our enemies. And just to let you know, your enemy ain't going to dress up in a Hamburglar mask and a black and white striped shirt with evil on his forehead and come to you, I'm evil, I'm here to destroy your republic. No, your enemy's going to say, I'm your friend, and let's go to war, and let's bankrupt your treasury. That's what your so-called friend, enemy, is going to do. Our law is not based on British law, not the British common law, not anything British. We had a revolution against the British. We created a republic. Now, if you want to understand the Founding Fathers, what you have to do is recognize that they knew philosophy, they knew geometry, they knew physics, they knew a lot of things. If you look at these particular bodies of science, you will notice that the guys that move these sciences forward, they don't create the body of work. What they do is seek out the first principle. So you look at René Descartes' Discourse and Reason, Cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, Euclid with his geometry, a point is that which has no part, or Einstein with relativity. If the first principle they discover has correlation to reality, the universe as God created it, then it will yield truth value. Even the mightiest house built on an imperfect foundation will fall. But even if you create a solid foundation, even a humble house will be strong and mighty and endure. This is what the Founding Fathers knew. So when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, it wasn't merely a great writ or a list of grievances against the king or a cause for separation. It was, in fact, the first principle. Because the Founding Fathers knew they were creating a constitution of government, not a constitution of the church, not a constitution of society. Clearly, there was a first principle that the church, society, and the government rested upon, because we don't live in a government, despite what your police officers and your military and your politicians try to ram down your throat. We do not live in a government. We live in a society. And so this first principle is in the Declaration of Independence. I like to call it the declarative axiom. And what it says is that God gave you your rights, that they are self-evident, which is another word for axiomatic, and inalienable, which means I can't take your rights from you. If I do and make them alien to you, you have an identity different from the identity you were given when God called you from your mother's womb, with your rights a part and parcel of who you are. Where your feet are, there be your rights. The genius of the Founding Fathers was to understand that a negative proposition was necessarily exclusionary, but a positive proposition was inclusionary. So they could separate church and state in the government. It is necessary and it must be so. But they didn't put God in his place. They acknowledged God in the proper place at the foundation of all things. We can all say amen to that, because if God gave you your rights, as Michael would say, who is like God? Who can take your rights from you if God gave them to you ad initio? No one can. If the state gives you your rights, the state can take them. That's what the Founding Fathers were all about. So that one day you might have recourse to look back at the foundation, give thanks for the source of your rights, and begin down that wonderful path of learning the source of all light and all good things. Or not. Bottom line is, even if you don't believe in God, you are down with it, because if God gives you your rights, nobody can take your rights from you. This is the genius of the Founding Fathers. Now, with all that said, you can finally understand this extraordinary type of case. It's called original jurisdiction. Now, when the state of Utah passes laws that are unconstitutional, that's one thing. But then when they decide to double down 2 years later and pass an article to their state constitution to create a firewall in states' rights to use it as a vehicle to acquire sovereign immunity so that they can tell this court here that they shouldn't listen to cases, they make a fatal error if I'm the pro se appellant, because I happen to know something. because the state takes an oath to uphold its own constitution as well as the state constitution, the governor, the judges, the police, everybody, it means they have a vested interest. And as a vested interest, it means they're a party to the cause. Well, if two neighbors are in a dispute, they can't be the arbiter of that dispute. They must find an outside judge. If a judge is involved in a case at any level, then he must recuse himself. The state is incompetent to take jurisdiction because they're a party to the cause, and thus it triggers original jurisdiction. Under Article 3 of the Constitution of these United States of America, you have what's called the Establishment Clause, and it's called the Establishment Clause for a reason, because the founding fathers were really wise dudes, and they invested all judicial power in this court here, the Supreme Court of the United States. That means that every other judicial court that the Congress creates, or the military, or anybody else, they are not merely inferior, they're derivative. It's like a great big spring is attached from this court to every other judicial body in the land. If your rights are being denied and disparaged of you, if the Constitution arises and it's contentious enough, the spring will contract and the case will be heard here at the Supreme Court. In the instant case where the state has gone so far as to try to create this firewall on states' rights and use it as a vehicle to invoke a sovereign immunity to protect laws they know are unconstitutional, and they are thus incompetent to hear the case because they have a vested interest in the case, there's only one court that can take up the question if a state constitution is in fact at variance with the United States Constitution. Because of the due deference we do give states according to their proper powers, and that court is the Supreme Court of the United States. Now to the facts. In my case, the false accuser, or we'll call them the victim, calls the police. The police show up. One officer is taking notes while the other's conducting the oral interview. This allows the notes to become best evidence because instead of a recollection, it's a recording. As he's recording the notes and the other officer's doing the interview, the story's starting to go sideways. It's not just different facts, it's different relationships between facts, it's a whole different story. So they go to the trunk of their car and get a witness statement form that you sign under penalty of perjury. They give me one, they give the false accuser / victim one. Now, there's a problem. At the time, the false accuser's husband wasn't home. He's now come home in plain sight of the police officers who know he wasn't home at the time. Nobody is suggesting it, and in fact, she has already insisted that he wasn't there in her 911 call. So now he's there, and they are actually watching perjury take place because he wasn't there and he has no input, yet him and his wife are talking in Afghani, filling in this form, discussing it, and writing as they're doing this. And so they know that pure fantasy is being placed inside this record. So at the end of the day, they have their notes, they have the story that didn't add up orally, and now they've got a whole new version that they themselves know has perjury involved in it. So they use their phone to call the taxi and help me get my machinery and tools out of the house, help me load up the trunk, load up the back seat, and send me on my way. Does that sound like the police thought a crime had been committed? Does it sound like they thought I had committed a crime? No way. Because if you have a lone woman in a house with a carpenter working there and she says she's been assaulted, the police are going to arrest you. They're going to take you to jail. You're going to get your right to bail out, exercise your right to bail, but the judge is going to decide the issue, if there is any doubt at all. But that's not all. In the 911 call, she's laughing, she's crying, she's going, it was like the John Carpenter's The Thing, okay? And then she turns to me and she hands me the phone and says, here, you talk to them, okay? So I talk to them. I say, are you taking this seriously? Are you sending a cop car? Because if so, I'll wait here. You want me to wait inside, outside? And I got all that there so it could be recorded, so everybody could see that this lady's lying. This is a woman, alone in her house, saying she's assaulted. She's handing me the phone, and when I finish talking, I hand it back to her, and she continues with her conversation to the dispatcher or whoever at 911. Clearly, this woman hasn't been assaulted. Clearly, she's not afraid of me. Clearly, she's lying through her teeth. And the police saw that, and they made the right call. But the state of Utah decided to prosecute me anyways. Now, there's three things that are really important I have to discuss about how an innocent man got convicted. There were a lot of things the judge did wrong that turned it into a kangaroo court, but three things are really important. First thing, sit down, shut up, stop quoting the United States Constitution to me. We have our own Constitution here in the state of Utah. That is incredibly prejudicial. But that's not really the law. Because when it comes to the pedanticity of the law, what we're really dealing with here is a judge who doesn't understand that you can overrule an objection, you can sustain an objection, you can ask for briefing on the merits, but you can't tell a man not to quote the law in a court. The United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and I can quote it in a court when I'm the pro se lawyer. But that's not just it. I can't even get the record from this judge, and I'm the lawyer. If you get the transcripts, you'll see that I didn't just quote the United States Constitution in context. I win the argument, because my right to confront an accuser under the United States Constitution trumps their joke laws of Utah. Second thing, I'm sick and tired of hearing your objections. Stop objecting. You can't object anymore. Now we're outside of America and into the universality of trial courts. A lawyer must object timely on the record to preserve his issue for appellate review. If he does not object timely on the record, his issue becomes moot and he cannot appeal. So she can't tell me that either. Third thing she did, she signed the subpoenas for the day after trial. Now I fill out the subpoenas. It's like a wish list. Subpoenas duces tecum for the notes, the conflicting witness statement forms, the 911 transcripts, the 911 tapes, audio, video, all that stuff is subpoenas duces tecum. Then you have subpoenas for the witnesses, like the police officers. I fill those different subpoenas out and I give it to the court clerk. Now the judge might say, hey, you're not going to subpoena Mayor McCheese or the president. And that means we have to have a hearing so I can show how, it's unique evidence and it's relevant evidence and I need this witness in court. So I get a hearing, and that means the trial is put over for that hearing to be had. I don't decide whether the subpoenas are issuing or not. I don't decide if the trial is going to be moved or not, and I don't fill out the date and I don't sign the subpoenas. The judge and the court clerk do that because they set the date for trial, they date it, they sign it or not, and I get a hearing or not on the subpoenas before they issue. So, the judge signs the subpoenas for the day after trial. Not my fault, not harmless error. This is the first trial prosecution in the history of planet Earth where the prosecutor doesn't want the police officers to take the stand. And they don't want evidence of their false accuser to make it into evidence. Normally, a defendant, whether innocent or guilty, he's fighting to keep evidence out. If he's innocent, he doesn't want to be framed, and if he's guilty, he doesn't want to get smoked. It's the prosecutor who's trying to throw in everything and the kitchen sink. In this case, they were weeding all the evidence out, and I've been fighting to get the total universe of the facts into court, and I've been doing it. Next year is 20 years without due process. So that right there should be extremely telling on who's telling the truth and who's lying, who's playing it cute and clever, and who's telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Now, the reason they denied a continuance motion, in part to get properly signed subpoenas and other things that I felt were necessary for the adequate erecting of a defense, which is one of my rights, is Utah has passed laws calling these false accusers victims and gives them a right to a speedy trial. Well, that's problematic. In this case, there was no crime except the crime committed against me. I wasn't just innocent in jail. I was an innocent man in jail doing time for the crime committed against me. Now, even if there was a crime and they were victims, they don't become victims of mine until I'm found guilty. They might got the wrong man. So you see, any victim's right they have wouldn't be operative at trial. So what is this victim's right to a speedy trial that they then 2 years later tried to protect with the firewall of an article in their state constitution so they could use it as a vehicle to invoke sovereign immunity and prevent the unconstitutional laws from being struck down? Well, this is the thing. The victims' rights laws, when they were first designed, and let me explain this, if I were to give you a list of football teams or colors, you would get the first ones and the last ones in order and probably correct. It's the ones in the middle you mix up. But when you look at these laws, Title 77, Chapter 37 and 38 of the Utah Criminal Code, you'll find it's all just nothingness. It's like the Patriot Act. It's just a bunch of spam. And then dead smack in the middle, right to a speedy trial. So you see, if this right really existed, then they identified it. They said this is a right that's been denied and disparaged and has to be codified. And then they would do the hard work, the complex work, the difficult task of finding a way to make it manifest in legislation so that it would comport with the existing Constitution and Criminal Code and the United States Constitution. But that's not what they did. They passed the legislation first and then realized, well, this is going to get struck down. Let's create a firewall with states' rights. So you see, this isn't really a right. It's an anti-right. It takes away your tried, true, and tested rights under the United States Constitution to raise an adequate defense. I didn't want to invoke my right to a speedy trial. I wanted to invoke my right to raise an adequate defense to get subpoenas signed for the day of trial so the police officers could be there so I could get them on the stand and say, yo, how come you didn't arrest me? Well, there was no crime. And so I could get the conflicting witness statement forms in, which is the best evidence, so people could see that they're lying through their teeth and the cops made the right call by not arresting me and knowing that those people were lying. So, that's the case. Article 1, Section 28 of the Utah Constitution, Title 77, Chapter 37 and 38 of the Utah Criminal Code. Sounds really nice, victim's right to a speedy trial, but it's an anti-right. It isn't a thing, it's an anti-thing. And it is not effective at your trial because until you're convicted, you ain't a perpetrator, and there ain't no victim that can march into your trial and invoke a right, let alone a right to a speedy trial. That's the case. Next year is 20 years without due process. It's original jurisdiction. I filed the notice of appeal 3 different ways. Now, because the judge told me that I couldn't object just before trial, I said to the judge, before pretrial ends and the trial begins, I have to file this motion because you wouldn't let me object in a timely manner. She said, fine, if you can get it done, we'll do it, because trial was about to start. Well, I had made up something. The American canon of law probably doesn't have a motion to preserve in it. Well, it does now. A motion to preserve my objections on the record in a timely manner such that if an innocent man is convicted, he has recourse and appellate review without his issues becoming moot because the judge wouldn't let him object in a timely manner on the record. Now, I made copies of that, got the court clerk to copy it, had certificates of service, filed it on the prosecutor, filed it on the trial court, and had a copy myself, and it was accepted into the record. That's a notice of appeal. Then after the joke trial, where the accuser gets to accuse me, and the judge doesn't say to her, Zabit al-Malakal, you can leave now. What happens is, the prosecution ends. Now, lawyers have been coming up to me here at the Supreme Court telling me I need certiorari, I need this, I need that. No, I don't. This is the case I want heard. I don't want another case and roll the dice on winning that to get this case. I want this case. This is the case I want heard. Well, they've also been telling me that I don't get to do what I tried to do at trial. And here I'm going to explain to you why the Founding Fathers were wise to let pro se's act in their own defense. Because the defect is not in me, it's in the trial court. A defendant does not have to put on a defense. There was no crime. I'm not guilty, and I happen to know that. So I didn't need to raise a defense. So when the prosecutor finished their prosecution, that was when I decided whether I needed a defense or not. And so the judge can't tell me, well, you should have asked your questions during a chance to cross-examine, because I don't need to ask any questions during cross-examination, and I can limit my cross-examination to the bare minimum if I want. As the defendant, I don't have to put on a defense, and I don't have to make that decision till the prosecution rests. Well, the prosecution rested, and I don't know if they got a little dial out and spun it until it landed in one place, but she did a pretty good job of being consistent about the lies she told. So, once the prosecutor rested, I had to raise a defense. It was at that time that I stood up and told the judge my trial strategy, which is to raise an affirmative defense and make their witness my witness, because I had no other evidence and no other witnesses. They did a good job of preventing that. So I was going to call Zabit al-Malakal as my witness. It means I can't cross-examine her. It means I can't ask ask confrontational questions or leading questions. But I can use her under direct examination to ask her questions like, how many police officers were there? Because I don't see them here. Did you fill out a witness statement form? Did the officer take notes? I don't have those. You see, discovery is an ongoing process. And if I have to raise a defense, then I need evidence. And since the evidence was excluded through a kangaroo court at pretrial, I now have a chance to make effective what was defective in the trial court. And I can do that in raising my defense. I'm allowed to do that. I have a right to defend myself and to do it in my own way, in my own time, after the prosecution rests. That's what I tried to do. And as soon as I told the judge what I was going to do, that I was going to call Zabudan Malakal to the stand as my witness, like a set piece, like a double play in baseball. Zabudan Malakal, will you stand, the judge says. Did you get a subpoena? And the judge knows she signed the subpoenas for the wrong date, so Zabudan Malakal's allowed to say no, she didn't get a subpoena, even though she did, because it's got the wrong date, so it's not legal. No, Your Honor, I didn't get a subpoena. You can go. So you see, the judge didn't tell her to go after she lied and accused me. She told her to go after I said I was calling her to the stand to ask her direct questions. That is a violation of my right to confront my accuser. Now, they want to say you had a chance to confront your accuser when the prosecution was prosecuting me. Negative. I get to confront my accuser when the defendant is forced to raise a defense because she's lying through her teeth and she did a good job at lying. I don't know that till she lies. So there you go. That's the case. Next year is 20 years without due process, and if you don't understand how wicked and evil what they did to me and how they know what they did, it isn't just obstruction of justice, it's treason. It's because of everything they did to me over the last bunch of years to prevent me from being heard. And so here I am, living at the Supreme Court. I've been here since October 3rd. It's November 29th, and I'll be living here till the case is heard, till they make me disappear again or they put a bullet in my head. And then this wonderful dude came by, God bless you, and decided to let me exercise my First Amendment right, indeed, to talk about the Fifth Amendment, but also to talk about original jurisdiction, because it is an extraordinary case. The day I walk into that court, it isn't just the end of the joke laws in Utah, it's also the end of states' rights and sovereign immunity. Check out the 9th and 10th Amendment and see that I'm telling the truth. And basically they stole my brief, and that's one of the reasons they're being so hardline about this, because they know I'm going to win that argument about states' rights and sovereign immunity. God bless you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm impressed. You know, all this was done with no teleprompter or anything. He's just speaking from his heart, you know. It's on his mind. That means something, you know, that he's out here, sitting here since October 3rd. So how do you do that? How do you survive out here?
Well, I go to Union Station to go to the washroom, and then at H&2, a truck comes to feed people, and every 3 days or so I go down there. I get enough sandwiches to last me 3 days, and then I come back here. And basically I sleep here, I walk around with my sign, I talk to people every day. And, you know, the reason I'm doing that isn't just because I wrote 1,400 emails to Congress and dealt with 3 administrations, including Halder, and called William Souter on the phone 7 years ago and other court clerks and told them what the deal was. It's because if people see I'm committed, if they see me in the rain, in the cold, sleeping here, and they see that, then they take it seriously. You know, if you just come and go, then they don't take it so seriously. So that's what I'm doing. It's my last only hope. I think Oblivious is just a clown. I mean, it's better than the Mormons getting in. They almost stole the election again. But, you know, he said he was going to change things, change. He's just a big fan of David Bowie, hosting a sing-along to the policies of Bush Clinton. What's the most egregious policy of Bush? Well, it's summary execution, right? The Mossad says some guy's a terrorist because he believes in Palestine. They kill him without a trial. He doesn't even get to stand up at trial and say, yo, I'm innocent, before they put a bullet in his head. And, of course, he put the Clintons back in power, which, to me, is just bad news. The Clintons were the ones that removed that law that then allowed banks to speculate. Sure, the Republicans took advantage of it, but Clinton's the reason why the mortgage crisis happened.
Yeah, and they lifted the trade embargo with China, too, which opened up a whole can of worms and polluted the lands of China. Sure. And it's just crazy over there. I haven't even been over there, but I've seen, you know, the government doesn't allow many videos to get out, but I've seen some videos that got out. I mean, they're taking over people's land, farmers, you know, fighting back with pitchforks, you know, against guns, and like supposedly there's no guns allowed. How does, you know, this militia have guns to mow them down? It's just all crazy over there. Sure. And you know, the embargo, the trade embargo being lifted in China, you know, it just gave the upper hand to the communist government over there.
I'm no fan of Bush. I don't like him either, and we can talk about Reichstag 9/11 another day. But let me tell you something. Bill Clinton destroyed the economy. He didn't help it, okay? It's short-term gain, long-term pain with that clown. And there's another thing. you don't deal with hardliners. You don't help them. You help moderates. Okay, you tell those guys, you give us human rights, we'll give you economic help. You don't just give economic help to the hardliners so they can just kill all their people. And believe me, there ain't no such thing as a global village. We can't get 10 people in the room to agree on anything. There ain't no way the Chinese, the hardline communist Chinese, they want you making flip-flops for a bowl of rice a day. They got $3 trillion of U.S. currency. Ask yourself a question. Gold's trading above $1,700 an ounce today. In 2005, it was like at $300. Why didn't they invest that money in gold and quadruple their reserves? They got 1,000 tons of gold. We got 8,000 plus tons of gold. It's a weapon, yo. It's a weapon. So these guys are selling out the country to elitist hardliners, whether they're dictators, communists, I don't care what they are. They don't have any love for their people. So when Bill Clinton tells Bush, yo, it's the economy, stupid. No, they're both a couple of clowns. It's like Beavis and Butthead do in America. Bill Clinton, yo, it ain't the economy, stupid. It's about human beings, you douchebag. So I just want to say that because the Clintons are scum. George Bush is an imbecile, no question, but the Clintons sell it, and it's about time people woke up and saw that.
So what do you think about the luncheon between Barry and Mitt today?
Well, I think that Obama is a clown. He said he was going to change things. He hasn't changed a thing. He's a puppet. We need an investigation into 9/11. We cannot move forward on a foundation of lies and treason. I guess since we're talking about it, I'm going to throw it out there. I think the Kennedys were killed over Diamana. I think Rachel Corrie was killed over a video. I think our USS Liberty sailors were killed as a pretext to bomb Egypt during the Six-Day War. And I think the same people are responsible for 9/11. They murdered our firefighters and our innocent civilians in order to get an illegal, unconstitutionally funded, never-ending war. How does a war on terror end? It's a contradiction. War is against nation-states. Terror is not sanctioned by nation-states. Who surrenders?
You go to
wins?
war with an objective, and that's it.
Well, you state the causes belli.
Yeah, you complete the objective, and then you're out, and you're done. You do what you have
and
to
according to our law, you have to go into that Capitol building over there, state a casus belli, a cause for the belligerents, and then the Congress gets to vote to fund your war because they declare war and fund it, and then every 2 years you go back and restate the casus belli, and they have to cut a new check. They've been funding this war with supplementals. It's the longest war in American history, and why do they want a perpetual war that can never end? Because nobody can surrender, nobody can ever win it. Well, it's to establish something that can't be done in the light. Twin anti-purposes, biblical borders and Pipelinistan. And that's what our firefighters died for. It's the state of Israel. So you can believe what you want to believe, do some research, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. Those guys aren't idiots. Some of them graduated summa cum laude from Berkeley and MIT, smart dudes. Pilots for 9/11 Truth, they don't hate their country. They're not traitors. They served our country. Their comrades died flying planes in Korea and in Vietnam and in the Gulf War. They're good dudes, straight up dudes, straight arrows, and they got their names. So they're not hiding behind a computer keyboard. And they got their radies data and they put it on the web, and what they're telling is the truth. They're good dudes telling the truth. They're patriots. So you go look up this evidence, go see Simon Shack's September Clues, and do some thinking. Because what you were shown was 16 seconds of digital imagery, fake digital imagery, layered images in order to fool you and terrorize you so you would give up what you wouldn't give up in any other way. You see, this is the thing. If you're willing to surrender your rights in a time of harm, how long until wicked, evil douchebags decide, hey, let's bring harm purposely on the country to get what they won't give up any other way? So do some thinking, huh? Michael Chertoff's cousin was the one who wrote that 911 debunking in the Popular Mechanics. Michael Chertoff's at the head of Homeland Security. When you investigate crimes, look at motive, opportunity, reward. Who's winning? God bless you. Have a good day.
Yeah, very good. I'm hoping I do this too. I go around asking people if they'll sign my copy of the Constitution.
Sure.
Get that. I've got about 130 signatures. Usually I hit up politicians and stuff. Your favorite amendment, anywhere there's room, doesn't matter.
I think I'll go with the original jurisdiction establishment clause, Article 3. And
it's towards the beginning. The Declaration of Independence is in that.
Oh, is it? Then I'm signing the Declaration.
Alright, that's in the back.
Oh, it's in the back? Okay.
somewhere though.
That's it. I'm going to sign it right here. That's it. Just sign above it? Like, right
Any way you want.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
God bless you. Thanks.
And the battery's about to run out too. You did a very good job.
All right.
Thoroughly impressed with that. The only thing I want to say is, I try, even though like, I know what you mean, people being douchebags and stuff, I try and look for the good in everybody.
Well, treason is treason, so...
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's, but...
They're putting innocent people in jail, including myself, and they have no mercy on the innocent. I don't see why I should have mercy on them in their guilt.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I've been through a lot of rough stuff too, and I'm still angry about it. You know, I part of what I do, like why I do things now, is just based solely on my experiences with injustice. And I don't know, I'm changed forever because of it.
Sure. And the thing about the Clintons, there's no off switch. They never go away. It's like Night of the Living Dead. They
It's
never
like cockroaches.
Yeah, they just keep coming back and screwing everybody and then blaming the Republicans. Well, tell you what, if you're a disaster and you can't succeed because the Republicans are doing you in, do everybody a favor and leave and let the Republicans do you in while you're playing chess and stop affecting the country in a negative way. So I don't care if it's the Republicans' fault or your fault. Go away.
All right, it was great talking to you. You need anything? I got like $5-10 on me. I can go grab you a drink or a sandwich.
Poor people are always helping me out. These rich people
Yeah.
that ignore me every day, they could throw me $100 and be like us finding a penny. Screw them, and you keep your money. What you just did is awesome.
All right, cool. I got a poncho too. Do you have a poncho?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, he's prepared. This guy is probably the most prepared man in Washington right now. He knows what he's doing. I can tell. He said all that stuff from, without looking at notes. He shot from the hip. I don't think I've seen anybody in that Capitol building over the past couple of days say something from the hip. Well, actually, maybe. I think Dennis Kucinich, he had a 1-minute thing where he questioned the wars today. I saw that on C-SPAN.
He also tried to impeach Bush.
Yeah, and Obama.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he tried.
Good. Wow, I didn't know that. That's
I
awesome.
think that's why he lost in the primaries. Because he lost in the primaries. I think the establishment came down hard on him for that move. He actually signed my copy of the Constitution.
Oh, cool.
He signed Section 1, Article 8.
Oh, yeah.
About the Federal Reserve. What do you think about the Federal Reserve?
Well, it's not federal, it's not a reserve, and Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy only have two things in common. Number one, they gave us back our honest dollar, and number two, they both had their brains blown out all over their wives' faces. So that's the two things they have in common. And I think, again, I think the Kennedys were killed over Diamana, but let's face it, the reason why so many people in the institutions were willing to go along with it was because he was an honest guy. He showed us that peace and prosperity can coexist. You don't need war, profiteering, anarchy. When these guys go over for Pipeline-A-Stand, do the profits make their way through our society, like trickle down? And you know what? I wouldn't even care if it did. I'd still be arguing against it. But just saying, when they steal the oil in Iraq, do they give you a cut of the pie? No. I don't believe in the distribution of wealth because I'm not a communist, but I don't believe in the distribution of wealth upwards because I'm not a fucking imbecile. Seriously.
Yeah, corporatism.
Corporal fascism, man. That's what they like to do. They want to mislabel republic and capitalism. They call it capitalism, they call it republic, but really what is it? It's corporal fascism and police state, because that way nobody advocates for republic, and that way they can win by deconstructing it. Look, in a republic, you acknowledge freedom for the patriot and the traitor alike. That's why Jefferson said the tree of liberty has to be replenished by the blood of traitor and patriot blood alike, because the patriot never looks like a patriot because he doesn't obey. He questions the government so people can be free. It's the traitor who comes to you, speaking in tones and with language you like Bill Clinton, Mr. Angel of Light, and he's a traitor. So you have to realize that, you know, if you want your republic back, if you want your republic to be free, then you got to step up and get run over, man. You got to step up and recognize what they're up to. Capitalism is not corporal fascism. Democracy is not socialism. Republic is not police state and empire. Fact.
Alright, I'll leave it at that because the yellow light keeps blinking. It's good talking to you. Take care. I hope things pan out for you.
This is how it's going to get hurt. This is how it's going to turn around.
Yep, I'll try and get it up there and do it as ASAP.
All right.
Alright, take care, man.
All right. God bless you.
Yep.